A very good morning and welcome to Media Monitor, the show that monitors and evaluates media coverage of leading stories of the week and puts the media in the spotlight. I'm your host, Alicia Jolly. We're live on SABC News. We're all local, all global, and all the time. A very good morning to you. In our lineup today, we start by discussing today's newspaper headlines and the coverage of the attacks on Public Protector Thuli Madonsela. We also look at the former Mineral Resources Minister Susan Shabangu's contradictory testimony at the Marikana Commission, the possible suspension of EFF MPs from Parliament, and because we don't grow fatigued of stories, we continue with the coverage of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa and the spread of the virus. We look at the Lesotho coup claims. We also look at the spy tape saga, and finally, we discuss coverage of the new truce between Palestine and Israel. Now, to give us analysis on the coverage of these stories, let's welcome Ms. Sehomaja, editor at the Rhodoport Northside newspaper, Ms. Paula Frey, director at Frey Intermedia, Mr. William Bird, who is a director at Media Monitoring Africa, and on the line we will be joined by Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, founder of the organization Gift of the Givers. Remember, you can call us to give us insight on the stories that you think deserve to be covered by the media, but were omitted on the following numbers: +2 711 714 6847, 714 6843, 714 6857. You can share views and comments on Twitter at SA Media Monitor, as well as our Facebook page, Media Monitor. Very good morning to you. All right, now in our breaking story today, Lesotho Prime Minister Tom Thabane has called for unity in his tiny mountainous kingdom amid the political upheavals in the country. Let's take a look at this insert.
Their conduct has been the public protector going on road shows, including international trips where she speaks on matters that are still under process and outcome not known.
Lesotho Prime Minister Tom Thabane told the SABC that his government managed to stop the coup before it could succeed. He says his government, with the assistance of neighboring South Africa, are now working towards normalizing the situation here.
I think that the suspicion that there could be a coup was not totally unjustified. Looking at things in general, there were makings of a coup, but I think it was nipped in the bud and it is not going to take place. What we are doing now in collaboration with South Africa, which has now temporarily taken the chair of the SADC organ on politics, defense and security, we are dealing with the situation in order to normalize it as quickly as possible.
Thabane denied that he had in fact run away from his country to seek shelter in South Africa. He says he nearly needed a break.
My coming here is interpreted by some people as having come here as some sort of refugee. You know, I came here because I needed a break, and I think I'll be getting back home tomorrow or the day after. But what is waiting for me there is to sort things out, still in collaboration with South Africa, with a clear vision of getting these things out of our way, and certainly we will.
Political tensions had been running high in the kingdom since June. This was after Prime Minister Tom Thabane had suspended Parliament, allegedly to dodge a vote of no confidence. At the time, South Africa had warned against simmering tensions. Prime Minister Thabane could not confirm or in fact say when Parliament will reopen.
For a democracy to seem to be lacking in terms parliamentary, then there's something wrong. Just a couple of days before I came here, we were sitting with the Speaker. We had very good reasons to suspend our Parliament. And that suspension, by the way, which is called prorogation, is inside our Constitution. And it was put in the Constitution there that when time demanded for it to be used, it must be used. And the circumstances under which we used that tool of prorogation demanded that. But now, with time, and with us having cured the wounds that caused us to deal with each other in that fashion, healing, we are bound to reopen our Parliament.
Another coalition leader of Basotho National Party told us that Thabane's government is still firmly in charge. This is, of course, despite what has happened recently in this kingdom.
The coup has failed, but luckily, because people informed us planning the way forward it's also to establish how we can normalize the situation. But we know these things, we have seen them happening. We are going to request the support of the South African to come to Lesotho and support us to establish stability in the country. Because now, you know, the police are not there. And now there are these people who only the army has there.
Thabane told the SABC that he will be back in the country no later than Monday. Yolisa Njamela, SABC News, Maseru, Lesotho.
All right, that's our reporter Yolisa Njamela out in Lesotho. Now, panel, what's going on here? I'm actually surprised that this story didn't make news across all our newspapers. What do you make of that, Mr. Bird?
It's bizarre, and I mean, as we've seen from the clip, it's not only our newspapers, but it would appear some of the leaders are out of touch with reality, you know, saying that, oh, no, I'm here for a break. It kind of doesn't seem the best time to be taking one, with all due respect. But in regards to the media, for them not to be leading with this, I mean, I guess it shows the kind of lack of emphasis that we generally have around stories from our own region. I don't think we give them enough coverage. I think to see this story pop up now and not understand why it's popped up, you know, why was Parliament suspended? That should have been a story that we've been covering for a while now. It shouldn't be that it gets to the point where we're having people saying the coup has failed when it would appear that it hasn't on some level failed, you know, and then to not be understanding what the real issues are. For people to say everything's fine, no it isn't, yes it is, it's just, it leaves me as a South African, having gone through some of the papers, feeling pretty perplexed about what's really going on.
Paula?
Well, you know, I think the fact that people were surprised yesterday that this happened is an indication that we failed on some level to explain the story, because since the elections in 2012, there have been murmurings because it has been a coalition government. Things came to a head in June this year. With Parliament being suspended, I can't remember seeing that being given huge prominence in certainly mainstream print media, but definitely not also on radio or even on television until things came to a head yesterday. What's interesting, though, is how well new media has been able to deal with the story. And so a lot of the information that we were getting yesterday was actually on websites, on blogs, on independent writers who have an interest in the SADC region, who've been giving stories and basically playing catch-up for the rest of us that haven't been following the story in newspapers. So you're right, it's a huge surprise to some degree that they haven't followed the story properly, but then again, given how we cover SADC generally, it's not a surprise at all.
Very interesting that you mentioned that this has been an ongoing conflict. I mean, the SADC summit that was recently held in Zimbabwe even spoke about the fact that they've appealed for the leaders in Lesotho to actually, you know, try and find ways of ending the conflict. Lesego?
Oh my gosh. I think that, you know, leaders in this regard, and African leaders especially, what Mr. Bird said, that they lose touch of reality, and in that the media now misleads people, because what we write is what they give us, and now we're not giving people what they actually need to read about what's happening. And it's also very significant that we cover Lesotho. I mean, we surround Lesotho as a country, but Al Jazeera and BBC are covering Lesotho more than we are. So it's very unfortunate.
All right. Well, then I suppose the question is, was it a coup or wasn't it? What have you seen? What have you gotten from the reports, William?
Well, some seem to suggest it was and others seem to suggest it isn't. But then again, you need to say, well, what is the definition of a coup? And I guess it's when you have a military or otherwise armed insurrection against some form of legitimate government, where they go and seize power. And in this instance, it would appear that the Sunday Times led with it, which is to their credit, I think, that the South African Special Forces seem to have wished him out for his 2 days of R&R, which would kind of fly in the face of it being a coup, you know. And I think that they're desperately trying to put a different spin on this. But for all intents and purposes, I think when your army goes and takes over from the police, it's a coup.
All right, that's where we leave it on the Lesotho story. Now, in our next story, Public Protector Thuli Madonsela urged the ANC to rein in party members who have launched personal attacks against her over the Nkandla report. Let's take a look at this insert.
Their conduct has been the Public Protector going on road shows, including international trips where she speaks on matters that are still under process and outcome not known.
In my respectful view, the hysteria that has followed not only compounds the problem, but is also symptomatic of more underlying problems, particularly regarding issues of trust, common decency, and rational discourse.
All right, panel, there was a big media frenzy over the story. I want to hear your views. Lesego.
It was very interesting that it unfolded like in front of our eyes, actually, and they actually played to the media's tune. Everybody was having their own say, and they were not realizing that this could actually come back to bite the ANC more than anything. And it was interesting how everything was covered, where to a point that, listen, you don't even need to ask the public protector or just as a person go to social media or go, it was everywhere in our faces. And I like the fact that I don't like the fact that the letter was published. I think that was kind of a compromise for journalism integrity. But I like the fact that the ANC was saying a lot and Thuli was just backing down sometimes. She wasn't saying a lot, but she handled it in a professional manner. But yeah, it was very interesting.
Paula?
So, you know, the public protector story really speaks to the heart of our democracy. I mean, the way we treat and the way we respect Chapter 9 institutions is critical as a constitutional democracy. And so I think the way that the story has unfolded in the public arena has been, as Lesego was saying, fairly good in the sense that there's a lot of awareness of the public protector's office, there's a lot of awareness of what the public protector does. But I do think also that there's a lack of thought leadership in the sense that I think Ms. Modensela is absolutely right that, in fact, there are concerns about the way people criticize her as a representative of her office, and we need to be aware of what role actually the office plays. And I find it very interesting that the attacks against the public protector are very often personal attacks against her as a woman. And I wonder how much of it is about just our general sexism, about the cheeky woman knowing her place.
All right, thank you, Paula. And I was going to say, for the public protector to call for a media briefing to explain the role of her office, why hasn't the media raised this issue, William?
Yeah, look, they should. And to be honest, I don't think that we give enough coverage to what our Chapter 9 institutions are and could and should be doing. You know, there was a little bit of coverage given recently to the Human Rights Commission's victory in court over the appalling conditions in Ndela, and there you didn't see that them coming out, the ANC coming out and all guns blazing. And what you immediately get is the sense of when it involves, you know, number one, then they're prepared to come out and swing and go bananas about this, you know. But when it's on another issue, then it would appear that there's a lot more tendency to be silent on these matters and to not want to get involved and not come out and support them. And I completely agree with Paula's point about that. There is an overt gender dimension to these things, not necessarily as played out as much by the ANC in some sectors, but certainly by some of their voices of support that come out. They call her, they're diminutive. They call her that little girl, or they say she's acting like an angry schoolgirl and that kind of thing. You know, which you wouldn't get if she was a man.
Now, panel, from that briefing, did the media relay the role of her office adequately to all South Africans? Let's start with you, Leslie.
Wow. Chapter 9 institution.
All right, let me take Sir from Randburg quickly.
Problem.
Sir, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Your comment, please, sir.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I think one of the major stories that hasn't really made the headlines and doesn't seem to have hit the weekend press either is the fact that Parliament itself is becoming a threatened species. It's going to get worse than being a mere farce that rubber stamps Luthuli House decisions. It's even going to become worse because the opposition parties have virtually threatened to boycott Parliament, to leave them to have their one-party Parliament altogether. That seemed to be the upshot of a caucus of the opposition parties.
All right, thank you, Zig.
Which was not highlighted at all. And it's high time that Parliament ceases to become a tool that opposes democracy and the rule of law and the Constitution.
Zig, thank you for your point. Thank you so much, Zig. He says, well, Parliament is becoming a threatened species. But getting back onto that, did the media relay the role of her office to the public after that media briefing? Lesego.
I don't think they did, because when you search the whole Thuli Madonsela versus the ANC saga, what pops up? What pops up is what happened, what's happening with them, their battles, their back and forth, but nothing about the media release. So I don't think they covered it sufficiently.
Paula?
I mean, Lesego is right in the sense that the coverage certainly has been about what she says versus what the ANC has said. And so there's a lot of he said, she said journalism happening here. And one would hope that in the follow-up stories that we would get more kind of analysis in terms of what the role of the Public Protector's Office is. And certainly I've seen on social media that there's a confusion about whether she has a right, in fact, to be writing to the President and outlining what he is supposed to be doing, when in fact it shows a lack of understanding of, in fact, of the power of the Public Protector. True. And lots of people criticizing her and saying, you know, she thinks that she's Parliament, when in fact there are processes that she's following and that she's right to be following.
William?
Yeah, I mean, for me, what's critical is that at the moment you're getting it set up as though it's this dichotomy between Thuli versus the ANC. And it may be that both of them have legitimate points about them, but we don't know that. So what we need and what we would expect from media doing their job around is providing analysis to say, these are the laws, this is what they mean. You know, we've got thousands of experts, we drag them all out for Oscar, we can pull them in for something that actually counts a lot more to our constitutional democracy. Get them to say, these are the particular powers. You know, I've seen a couple of voices, but they're the usual suspects. But let's start to say, well, what is the power? Maybe, is it appropriate so that people can then decide, you know what, the ANC is clearly overblowing this, they're behaving like a bunch of hooligans, or Public Protectors overstretched to a mandate, etc., etc. But you're not really in a position to do that unless you actually have a bit more of an informed opinion about it, which you aren't likely to get too much from the he said, she said style report.
I want to expand on that point just now, William. Let's take Kikina in Durban. Kikina, are you still with us on the line? A very good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
We're very well, thank you, sir. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, my comment is to begin with, before I go to Public Protector, I'm trusting on the Lesotho coup because these people learned it from the Pretoria racist regime who used to attack across the borders of our countries. And they were learning this at the time when it happened. So now the racist Pretoria regime was undermining the democracies of neighboring countries. So what is happening now is the outcome of the lessons they learned from the Pretoria regime. But it is not a good thing. I don't think they will succeed in Southern Africa. Whatever they were doing, I think they need to be arrested. There's no more coups allowed in Africa as a whole.
All right, thank you so much. That's Kikina in Durban referring to the issue in Lesotho. Now, William, you mentioned something very interesting. I wanted to say that the issues involving people are very, very sensitive. How can then media play a more proactive role in delivering the truth to the people?
Well, I think they could start by giving us a basic guide as to what the rules, regulations are for the Public Protector. Now, obviously, you can go and look that up on the government website. You can read the Constitution, etc., etc. But it's very hard to unpack what that means in normal terms to ordinary citizens. So that's why you'd expect that you'd get different experts putting things together, make it look nice, put it in an info diagram so that people can understand what the powers are, where they extend to, how the process is actually seen to, and then clearly what the facts are. Because there's all this thing of, oh no, well, Parliament's dealing with it. Yes, they are. No, they aren't. It should be the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, the special committee that's set up to look at Nkandla that should deal with this. No, it shouldn't. What is their mandate? What should their mandate be? All these kinds of things that lead to obfuscate. And so you don't generally get to deal with the real issues at hand. Instead, you're left to sort of work out, well, the one said this, the other said that. And then it comes down to a question of, do you trust to support the ANC or do you trust to support the Public Protector more? And that shouldn't be the case. It should be about, well, what actually is going on. And it's like the Lesotho thing that your caller referred to. They can say it's about R&R. It's nonsense. It's not about R&R, my friend. You're here because your country is going through a coup. And we need to state the facts clearly and simply for people so that we don't allow the masters of spin or those that are seeking to spin to prevent us from seeing what's really going on.
Thank you so much, William. Well, we're going to leave it there now, and when we return, we're going to discuss the coverage of the testimony of former Minister of Mineral Resources, Susan Shabangu, at the Marikana Commission, and the possible suspension of EFF members in Parliament. Join the conversation by calling us on +2711 714 6843, 714 6847, 714 6857, and let us know which stories, anywhere you are, you feel were not adequately covered by the media. You can still share your views and comments on Twitter at SA Media Monitor, as well as on Facebook. Don't go anywhere. This is SABC News.
I once saw a flower blossom through 27 prison bars of yesterday's unjust flames. I felt an old woman's anticipation for the country's first open elections. And I heard the loud celebrations of that flower's historic inauguration. I was there when Unity sang of how the Springbok never held anything back, and we saw a first-time band of 11 men, Shibobo possibility throughout the land. At the foot of Africa, time remembers how truth can reconcile a people. We carved our name into space, and on the world stage, our art stood united. When we blow that vuvuzela, the whole world goes into a trance. And even in that tearful hour of the flower's separation, we are a people who see the music and hear the flowers dance. SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Welcome back. You can still be part of our discussion by calling and tweeting us. You can ask your questions too via our Twitter account at SA Media Monitor and throw them to my panel of experts. We also want to hear your views on our topics. Now, in our next story, the Marikana Farlam Commission came under media spotlight once again this week after former Minister of Mineral Resources, Susan Shabangu, took to the stand and maintained that she did not allow herself to be influenced during the Marikana unrest. Let's take a look at this clip.
If a person in a public authority would allow himself or herself to be influenced in the manner that is described for gratification, and you can accept that gratification includes financial gain, that would amount to corruption.
Whoever asked him to influence me, Mr. Chairman, I think he failed to influence me because I was never influenced by him. I've been consistent. It was a labor dispute. Even after it continued to be a labor dispute.
All right, panel, what's your views on the coverage of the minister's testimony? Let's start with you, William.
I think it doesn't get the level of coverage that it should be getting, honestly. Again, I mean, it's just 2 years afterwards, and we're starting to see some people unpacking and pointing out the contradictions between her and our current Deputy President. They're different testimonies, but again, the kind of broader implications of that. So the thing is, our media is really interesting because if you look for it, you can find some excellent pieces on these things. And so there are journalists and there are writers that are writing and giving you nuanced, in-depth understanding. But if you're talking about it in terms of giving us an overall picture, broadly speaking, across the media, I don't remember seeing a Marikana story in the first 8 pages of a lot of these newspapers yet today. It might be an unfair comment, but we need to make sure that stays there. I think there was an excellent editorial by Ranjani Munasamy from Daily Maverick talking about the importance of Marikana and remembering it, and she drew attention to the attack in the States where that young man was killed by a police officer, and it brought the town to a standstill, literally. And there was, they had to put in times when they couldn't go out. I forget what it's called now. And we didn't do anywhere near the same for a whole lot more people. And the question is why?
All right, let's take Kondile from Mangawong. Kondile, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Your comment, please.
Morning, Alicia.
A very good morning,
Alicia,
sir.
with regard to the situation in Lesotho, the Mountain Kingdom, You'd remember that South Africa has done a lot of work there, including the president going there talking about issues relating to the project, the water project. But I haven't seen any situation where the political tensions that were there was raised sharply. So for me, I don't think the media has been able to do its part in ensuring that the plight either of the people or for the electorates or the problems of leadership are raised sharply, because I don't think this thing has come as a surprise to many South Africans and people around the continent, because the mere fact that you have not been able, as the media, to highlight this plight, I'm sure that's the only time that people would actually rise. And for me, I think that even the Lesotho media has got a problem, because if you can check the only prominent newspaper that you get is Lesotho Times, which is independent and can give both sides of the story. But with regard to, I'm not even sure when Alicia Okude they have a TV, because every time I try to switch on the Lesotho TV, I don't seem to be finding it. Now, the problem of lull with regard to media coverage in Lesotho, I think it's a problem, and it's something that even the South African media can look into and contribute immensely.
Thank you so much, Kondile. Do you want to just quickly add on that, Paula?
Well, you know, I mean, one of the issues that we fail to understand often is the reason why South Africa is so involved in this, because we fail to understand the processes around SADC, that in this particular case, South Africa is in fact representing SADC, that President Zuma has been to Lesotho to speak on the issue, that the Namibian president has been to speak to the issue. And so, and notwithstanding the fact that Lesotho is our neighbor and that it's a member of SADC, Gauteng, South Africa's economic heartland, really is dependent on water and electricity that comes from the Lesotho Highlands project. And so our destinies are integrally linked. And so the media really should be covering not just the economic and ramifications, but also the political outreach there, the need also for a greater understanding of democracy and democratic processes than we currently have.
Thank you so much there, Paula. Now let's get back to Marikana. Lesego, your views on the coverage?
I think this is the case of, it's something similar to Oscar Pistorius' case, where people have become a bit fatigued about, where the media has become fatigued about the coverage, where the media have become fatigued about events surrounding the whole Marikana Commission. So what they're giving us is sort of second level information, and the Marikana is sort of sidelined as well. So people are growing tired. The media industry is growing tired for some reason, and they keep replaying the same tapes. They keep replaying the same clips of what's happening. So it's what Mr. Bird was saying about, if they could really look into it, they would find something really journalism gold. They would find that.
And that's my next question. We're still begging for media to tell us the truth about what's going on in Marikana. People are declining to testify, but media is only giving some dramatic angles of the story. We're not getting the whole thing. Paula?
It's quite interesting because, you know, the minister's appearance at the commission was actually anticipated, and we would know that there'd be a higher level of interest because she was in fact testifying, which would give the media an opportunity to now be able to put her testimony in its context. And Lesego is right, there's a measure of fatigue that's happening, but when you have a high profile witness, it does in fact give you an opportunity to then give the context and the analysis. It has been a very, very long process, but surely that's part of the media's story, the fact that it has been such a long process, and we know closer to the truth than when we started out.
William?
Yeah, I mean, but it's also about the fact that just the week before, we heard some of unbelievably harrowing experiences of the actual miners. For the first time, well, not the first time, but I mean, you really started to hear some of their particular individual stories and tales, and those things were painful to read. You know, they were agonizing, I think, and we don't kind of really grasp that. But it's also because where we are as a nation. You know, we're full of violence. We have so many violent stories. To get a violent story into the news, you have to go and kill 34 people, or you've got to, you know, drag a child behind a car until they die, kind of thing, because otherwise those stories just aren't going to get there. And that talks to where we are as a country that's, you know, filled with violence. And what we should be doing is looking at how do we understand that violence, how do we unpack that violence, how do we de-escalate those levels of violence. And frankly, the level of discourse from some of our major politicians across almost every political party I think fuels that level of violence. They talk about these things. They use violent discourse. They use violent
All right,
terms.
hold that thought there, William. Let me take Thabo quickly from Tembisa. Thabo, a very good morning. Thank you for staying on the line.
Good morning, everybody there. I don't want to say much. Our government is undermining, not respecting the constitution in a constitutional house. What is happening about Thuli Madonsela? Madonsela is right. She is acting according to the book. And now the people are busy attacking her so that she cannot do her job properly. She is doing a great thing there. And in Lesotho, there is a coup because people are not satisfied about the leadership of such prime minister. He must go back and fix the country because we in South Africa have lots of things to fix. And then again in Marikana, you can't just shoot so many people, because of the mine and so ever. And lots of what we call the established the investigations and so on and so on. And we can see this thing is visible. Somebody is wrong. Why does somebody just come out and ask forgiveness to the Africans and say, I am wrong here, actually, I did this and I will pay it, so that everybody can be heard from that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I don't want to be...
Thank you so much, Thabo. That's Thabo saying that a lack of discipline obviously leads to things like coups. Now, William, you were still on a point.
I don't know if it's about lack of discipline as much as it is about a denial of voice of the citizens and of listening to that voice, and that you see that what that tends to happen as a result of that, and where it links to my point I was making, is that when people feel that the only way of being heard is to scream or to burn things, and then they realize that people still aren't listening until they burn things, until they protest, that's the kind of culture that undermines democracy, and it's the kind of culture that fuels violence of all kinds. We see again and again the issue around Marikana is that Lonmin refused to go and speak to the miners. Had they gone there that day, and had they gone there the days before, we may not have had all of those people killed in the way that they were. So it's very much about addressing and fueling and undermining that discourse of violence. And our political parties, they love to use this thing, they love to escalate these kinds of wars. You saw a call, there's a report in one of our newspapers today that allegedly an ANC SMS saying we have to go, the EFF is going to be attacking our president, and calling people to go to Parliament to defend him. That kind of thing is fundamentally outrageous, and if that is true, that person must be disciplined, because you can't be going in soliciting violence in that kind of way. It's fundamentally damaging.
Yeah. I agree. I have to agree with William with the call, because even the EFF said that when they got warning that the ANC supporters are coming to the National Assembly, to attack Julius Malema. So I guess what people are doing now is playing with the media. Basically, we are definitely the microphone, and we are the microphone. So people are using us to get word out there, and then now they're also using us to play their conflict, and they don't sort out their issues, they don't iron them out in their own personal space. It needs to go out there, and this confuses people. This really confuses, because people now have to pick sides. And the problem is with big political supporters and advocates, which are the ordinary citizens, they don't understand the basis of things, and they're very sensitive to a point that you touch my leader, you touch me.
All right, listen, hold that thought. Let me take William from Protea Glen. William, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Your comment, please.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, we are speaking to William from Protea Glen.
Morning, William.
Yeah, morning, sir. Yeah, but people they don't respect are those the institution that they've created. See now, like our president is keeping on coming with the commission, and then those commissions are making recommendations. After making recommendations, they don't adhere to the recommendation. See now, he did appoint other commission. They found that the former commissioner of police was not fit for office. But they bring back again as a Deputy Minister of Agriculture into the limelight again. And then again, the Office of Public Protector. They don't also respect the Office of Public Protector. He comes with a recommendation, but instead of dealing with the questions asked by the Public Protector, he takes the matter, prolong the matter, going to the SIU, going there and there, and then from there, who's going to pay the bill?
All right, thank you so much, William and Pro-Chair Glenn. All right, let's move on to our next story now. EFF leader Julius Malema warned the National Assembly Speaker Baleka Mbete that unless she withdrew plans to suspend him from Parliament this afternoon, he would launch a court challenge. Panel, your views. Paula, let's start with you.
You know, I think the last time I was on the show, we were talking about what happened in fact, the Gauteng legislature. And again, it's the process of, can we explain to people, in fact, what the processes of Parliament would be, why they would be suspended, how they would be suspended, and what they, in fact, need to do. And very often as media, we fall short of being able to do that.
William?
Yeah, again, it's about unpacking and seeing how Parliament should work, who actually has a legitimate case here. Does the Speaker have a legitimate case to say, I'm going to suspend you in terms of these rules because what you did was you refused to listen to me when I asked you to leave the House, etc., and you did these and these things, versus their point of saying, well, the President refused to answer the question. And we left again to this thing of, it comes down to almost which political faction you support, which again I think is inappropriate, and it leaves the audience in a place where, you know, if you support the ANC, then yes, this is outrageous and fundamentally unacceptable, and if you don't support the ANC, you're going to be going, well, yes, for them to be doing this, they panicked, etc., etc. And there are a whole lot of really interesting questions there. For example, they cut the feed. What's curious about that is I thought we'd see lots of stories about when they cut the feed and on what basis whoever decided to cut the feed, both the audio and the visual. Here you're dealing with something of national importance occurring in Parliament, and the feed was cut. And the question is, I want to know why, and I want to know what guarantee we're getting that will never ever happen again. Because how do you justify that? William,
again, we're still begging media to educate people about the rules of Parliament. That's what we want to know. Paula?
No, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's still trying for people to understand what our real expectations of our representatives should be. You know, on the one hand, it's really nice television to see EFF doing what they do in Parliament, but does it lead to anything? Does it achieve anything beyond the fact that we have, for a few minutes, some exciting television? And I think, you know, again, it speaks to the whole issue of thought leadership. It's one thing for the media to simply report on what people do.
All right, hold that thought, Paula. Let me take our international caller, the Tennyson from Zimbabwe. Very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Morning. I'm watching you guys.
Thank you so much, Tennyson. Please go ahead with your comments, sir.
Yeah, we read so much about the Madonsela versus it could be versus Jacob Zuma, your president. You know, I'm wondering with your democracy, you know, what you're trying to do. I mean, because it looks as if you are running your government with commissions. Look at the Marikana issue that has been going on for quite a long time now. But the people are still suffering. But I can see all those commissioners, they are being fed every day. You know, so how does it work? That people take 3 years or several years to just come up with the same result that people were killed. The laws are there to protect those people. But it looks as if you run government with appointing of commissions which bring nothing at the end of the day. There is quarrels in the South African government every day. I don't know how you expect a government when people are quarreling every day and in the name of democracy. You know, it looks as if everybody is a student of the democracy in South Africa and nobody has graduated to become a Democrat.
Thank you so much. That's Tennyson in Zimbabwe. William, why are you smiling?
I think he's making some great points, actually. You know, I think that we do have this tendency, South African classic term, to have more commissions and you know, once you've had an investigation, you'll have another one to see if that investigation was correct about the first investigation and whether the commission report was accurate. So we know, for example, that it's not just on Nkandla that things don't happen. We've seen in Parliament just earlier in the week the Parliamentary Portfolio on Communication behaving, I think, abominably in the respect in which it failed completely to do its duty around responding to the Public Protector's report on the SABC. You know, there was very little discussion of it, and they said, well, we generally don't agree. At least that's how some newspapers reported it. And then it gets left to say, oh, well, there'll be another committee because there's a court case and. And the actual issues of accountability, of people doing things, of being held accountable to particular processes, I think, yeah, we fall short on those areas.
Paula.
But I don't necessarily agree with what Tinus is saying, in the sense that, you know, we don't vote every 5 years and then hand over our responsibilities to a representative in Parliament. And while we do have a tendency to have commissions for unnecessary things sometimes, the reality is that the commissions are about transparency, about being able to say, yes, it's not, we know who shot the miners. What we want to know are the circumstances in which that happened, and the responsibility and the accountability for various people, and also to know how it should not happen again, what we should do in future. And so I think part of the value of commissions is that it gives back to citizens the knowledge of what happened, so that we can also be active citizens in the way we demand things in future.
Thank you, Paul. I think people still don't understand what the real purpose of those commissions are. Let's take Gladys from Pretoria. It says, Gladys, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Gladys, good morning. Are you still on the line with us? All right, I think we seem to have lost Gladys on the line. All right, Lesego, your views.
You know, the other day I was listening to radio and John Frias, I think, he's a comedian, said in South Africa, people are complaining about the government and that there's no freedom, but they don't realize that what we're actually doing as a country is catching up to the rest. We do have freedom, it's just that now there's no freedom to fight for, it's all about power. And that's why they're spinning it to show that, you know what, we're all about management, it's not about freedom. There's no freedom to fight for, apparently. So it's all about the power and the management, and that's how they carry it through the media.
All right, let me take Xolani from Kempton Park. Xolani, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Your comment, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Alicia.
Go ahead, Xolani.
And on the issue of Marikana, Alicia, Paula, the Frontier Media, also the journalist sitting next to her.
Yes.
They are ones that are not giving the public the reality of what happened in Marikana. Actually, the media is the third player of defending the government, including the judicial law area, which is defending the government in the whole issue of Marikana. If media played the right role in dealing with this matter or exposing of what happened in Marikana, there should be no commission was established, because media was playing a reality in what happened, being transparent, not being a third player to a government, defending the government. Even now, Paula, if you hear to Paula, you listen to her. She is behind the government. She is not in the interest of exposing of what happened in
all right, Xolani. All right,
really,
Xolani. Xolani, let Paula answer. Paula, please go ahead and answer.
Well, actually, I would hardly say that that's the role that the media has played, because a lot of the coverage, in fact, about Marikana is the reason why a commission was set up. That if there was an attempt to clamp down on information, the media actually made sure that some of those stories are coming out. And in fact, some of the coverage by Maverick, iMaverick, were instrumental in actually realizing that things happened there that day that needed to be exposed and brought out into the public. And so I think that, you know, the media have actually played quite a good role in terms of saying something happened here that needs, and people need to be held to account for it. But in some ways, Xolani is right, in fact, in the sense that if the media were more proactive if the media had more resources and used those resources more responsibly, we would in fact have a lot more information coming out about Marikana, not only now, but before, in fact, that fateful day.
Thank
So
you
in
so
some
much.
ways I agree with him, but I also disagree in the sense that a lot of what the media did is, is the reason why we have a commission.
All right, there you have it, Xolani, and thank you for your views right here on the show. And when we return, we're going to look at the media coverage of the Ebola outbreak and the spy tapes. You can still be part of our discussion by just expressing your views as to which stories you think should have been covered by the media by calling us on +2711 714 6843, 714 6847, 714 6857. Share your views and comments on Twitter at SA Media Monitor as well as on Facebook. Stay with us. This is Media Monitor.
Zoom into Africa. This is Sierra Leone. The president is Mr. Ernest Bai Koroma. Sierra Leone got independent from the United Kingdom on 27 April in 1961. The population is more than 6 million people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is Leone.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. You can still be part of our discussion by calling us on the numbers that appear at the bottom of your screens or contact us on Facebook as well as Twitter. Paul from Umtata, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Paul, good morning. Are you with us on the line? All right, I think we seem to have lost Paul. We're going to move on to our next story now. Senegal's health minister has confirmed the first case of Ebola, making it the 5th West African country to be affected by the outbreak. Let's take a look at this insert compiled by one of our producers, Sibusisiwe Tongo.
The current Ebola outbreak in West Africa could infect more than 20,000 people, according to the World Health Organization. Meanwhile, West African Health Organization WAHO met in Accra with proposals on how West African leaders could contain the Ebola virus in the sub-region.
We must implement containment measures, but we must not implement measures that isolate and ostracize the affected countries. Excessive restriction of travel and border closure will adversely affect the economies of the sub-region.
A new mobile testing lab in Freetown, Sierra Leone, will help produce quick test results to help control the worst ever outbreak of the virus.
In the past, if you would like to test Ebola, you would have to send the specimens overseas from Sierra Leone to some reference lab in the world. And under these circumstances, the test results will be issued only after a few days, or sometimes even after a week, if not even longer. Here we can issue the results since when we receive the specimens, we can issue the results within 3 to 5 hours.
The lab, backed by the World Health Organization and South Africa's National Institute for Communicable Diseases, has already been testing dozens of specimens each day since it opened earlier this week.
All right, before we discuss the issue further, Paul is back on the line. Paul, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us all the way from Umtata.
Morning, Alicia. Thank you for taking my call. My quick question is, I saw this morning from City Press that the ANC is considering to ask the president to pay back the money, to pay a portion of the money. From that move, can we say that the ANC is thinking the president is guilty?
All right, that's Paul out in Umtata questioning. Panel, let's hear from you. William.
I didn't hear the question clearly.
All right, he says, is the ANC starting to think that the president, or hinting that the president is guilty if they're saying that maybe he should consider paying back the money?
I'm not entirely sure that it's a question of guilt per se, but in terms of the processes that should have been followed weren't necessarily followed, the recommendations being made by the public protector. I don't necessarily think that it's an issue of guilt or not guilt, but an issue of accountability.
All right, let's talk about Ebola now. Panel, has the media started to give us all the facts about Ebola eventually? Lesego.
South African media, I think so. Not all the facts, but there have been ongoing warnings, and there's been ongoing basically identifying how to identify if you've got Ebola symptoms. There's been that, but I think international media is lacking there.
All right. Now, with the World Health Organization announcing that Ebola could infect about 20,000 people before it's contained, and also that the outbreak may only be contained later next year, in the middle of next year, isn't this a serious worry for all of us in West Africa or not? William?
I don't think so. I mean, to me, this is where you have a minister that communicates well and effectively, you tend to get our media responding a lot more effectively. So our Minister of Health has been really good about this. They've been quick and swift to say when things are accurate and when they aren't. There was a scare that someone had Ebola in South Africa. The minister appeared within a matter of hours and said, no, this is not true, and gave reasons why. They also laid out what our government's response is. It was very clear, very crisp. We've seen a few info diagrams in our media about the various ways in which you can contract Ebola, those sorts of things. And I think that that's very useful, and it shows that where you have reasonable communication, you can get something done quite effectively. I think that international media, though, where this does play into the stereotypes is of, again, our continent of disease and of people that don't know what they're doing, without looking at the massive power disparities that we saw. The first trials of effective drugs being done on the people from Europe and the States, and you have to say, well, why is that? And there's something we should be looking into.
All right, and that's how we end our program. But before we leave, we're going to take some of your tweets that our loyal viewers, as always, have sent us on our topics today. Let's start with, who's that one? Our first one. No matter the differences, coup is no way a solution. It set the country and the continent back. We can't even see who that is, but thank you so much for your comment there. That is Mahlak or Mokabuki. Thank you so much. Jonathan Mulapo says, how do we say it's a coup yet Tabane is still Prime Minister? South African force just needs to assess its power. Thank you so much, Jonathan Mulapo. Gomi A. Tobejane says, it's time Lesotho becomes the 10th province of South Africa. Swaziland too. Thank you so much, Gomi Tobejane, for your comment. And last but not least, PP. All right, that's Champion South African says, PP is being attacked by ANC because she's the voice of the truth. She's putting the Constitution in action, and they don't like that. All right, and sadly, that's where we have to leave it. Unfortunately, panel, I can't even ask you what stories will be coming up this week. We're going to, unfortunately, leave it here. Thank you so much for joining us. There are viewers' contributions and suggestions. It's highly valued. You can follow us on Twitter at SA Media Monitor and share your views and comments on Facebook. Go to www.facebook.com/Media Monitor and like our page. You can email us your views about the show at mediamonitor@sabc.co.za. Thank you so much for watching Media Monitor. Join us again next week right here on SABC News Channel. And just in case you missed our live show, remember you can still catch the repeat tomorrow morning at 2 a.m. For myself, Alicia Jali, and the rest of the QTIV team, have a blessed Sunday. Good